Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lynn. I'm an addict. Welcome to the second Black African American NA Pioneers event. Today we have three wonderful segments for you where you're going to learn about the fight and the struggle for growing NA and strengthening NA in Detroit and in Birmingham, Alabama. The segments we have are the Pioneering Women of Detroit NA with Monica, Perline, Charcy, and Rosemary, and then a one-on-one conversation with Harold from Birmingham and one of the members of our committee, and finally, a second Detroit segment with Dwight, Bomani, and Brett. The Black African American NA Pioneers' vision is to capture the history of the many Black African American pioneers who played pivotal roles in establishing and growing NA throughout the USA. Our mission is to share with the worldwide fellowship of NA the stories and contributions of the many Black African American pioneers through events, podcasts, archives, and other means. Our first segment today is the Pioneering Women of Detroit NA. Detroit was in dire straits thanks to both the heroin epidemic of the 1970s and the crack epidemic of the 1980s. But a renaissance was about to take place when NA showed up and the women pioneers of NA in Detroit held fast and watched it grow.
Welcome, ladies. My name is Jackie B, and I would like to ask you a few questions about your experience in NA. Okay, first question, Monica. What was your experience and impression of NA?
My initial experience with NA, it really started in 1983, October of 1983. And I was struck with confusion with the whole recovery process. I heard about NA, but FA was my first shot at getting clean. But I came back in June 21st, 1984, and finding NA, I was totally confused. There was some discrimination there. It was like five women and maybe 15 men, and we were all Black. And the only NA meetings in the area was in the suburbs. And those are primarily white meetings. And we stuck together like we recovered in unison because we didn't know anything about this recovery process. I think it was only one person that had over a year. And so the discrimination and going to the meetings and the fear, I shouldn't say discrimination because I wasn't treated any different. I just felt that way. But when I finally got the courage to really open my eyes, I had to deal, with the fear. Is this really going to work for me? They wanted you to get a sponsor. There wasn't any women to choose from. There's only 5 women there. Perline hadn't gotten there yet. And so I had to choose a man, and I did. It was Dwight. And we sponsored each other. I just knew that I didn't want to use anymore. And I didn't find it hard to stay clean then because of the camaraderie that I experienced. I did experience some confusion with some of the cliches they said, that easy does it, the halt, one day at a time, what the hell did all that mean? And it took time and asking my so-called peers what that mean. They were just as confused as I was. But the main thing that I experienced was freedom. Freedom that I did not have to use anymore. And that there were people there that I could talk to that understood. And they weren't people that I used with. There are people, just like the literature says, that I probably wouldn't even mess without in the streets. But they understood. There wasn't anything that I couldn't talk about that the men could not relate or help me with, or the very few women could not relate and help me with. I had a daughter at the time, and she was born addicted to heroin. And I was so embarrassed about that. And I didn't want to share it. And I finally shared it. And like I said, found out I was not alone. And nobody condemned me for it. The freedom I felt, the freedom of being able to know that it's okay to wear underwear. You know, it's okay not to walk around with your boobs hanging out all the time. It's okay not to screw everybody because someone say, I love you. That doesn't mean they want to sleep with you. And that's what I thought. The very few men that were there, I thought I'm going to have to go through this again. But it wasn't like that. I didn't experience that so-called 13 stepping. They don't use that terminology anymore. But back then it was used a lot. I was blessed to realize it was one of the men that told me, ask your daughter to teach you how to be a parent. And you teach her how to be a child. And I said, now that is a dumb question to ask my daughter. But I thought about it and it made sense. Because she was 10 years old when I came into recovery. And for 10 years, she was taking care of me. And so I asked her, teach me how to be a parent, Nikki, and I'll teach you how to be a kid. And from that day on, she never, ever had to take the responsibility of taking care of me. Because I learned about responsibility, how to take care of myself. And I'm not saying it was easy because it wasn't. So like I said, it was just like 20 of us. And, you know, we were like, we had our backs to each other and it was us against the world. We recovered in unison. Like that wave they had at the baseball games, that wave, that was us. I experienced friendships. If they didn't see you, because when there were meetings finally started, which the whites started, H&I, and so when inner city meetings started, if you weren't at meetings, everybody knew you weren't there, and you would get a phone call. And one thing about back then, if your phone got turned off, the fellowship got your phone back on. I learned about being a friend. I learned how to be an employer, an employee, a parent, a friend. I had a lot of insecurities. And I learned how to sit and listen. But now it was primarily men. And we women caught hell having a voice back then within the Black community or the white community. It's just like the real world. You know, NA is just a world within the world here. And we deal with a lot of the same things. And I learned about patience and being patient with myself. I learned that I wasn't that bad. I'm so grateful that fellowship has grown and evolved into what it is now. Crack, I should say, changed the fellowship. It brought addicts in by the droves. But I'm so grateful for the experiences I had for the first 2 years.
Pearline, what was your bottom?
I was in a dark place, very dark. Was no light. It seemed like I was in a tunnel and you couldn't see nothing. It was just pitch black. And that's how it looked to me. And that's how I ended up reaching my bottom, because then talked to the authorities and I was able to get into treatment because I called my uncle and told them what happened, and because I had been smoking back then was called that freebasing, and I had been doing that, and it had me just all wired up. But then I was able to get in touch with my family members, and they came, to support me and give me help, taking me to treatment, and that was my bottom. Finally getting in treatment, and also I still had to go through a whole lot due to the fact if you ever had the police to come in your house, and it's like being raped because they go through everything. All my dirty clothes, they went through everything. It was terrible, but that was my bottom, you know. But that's what happened with me. And when I was in treatment, they had meetings to come to where I was in treatment, but they had no NA. It was AA or FA, and that was it. You didn't. I knew nothing about NA period until I got in touch. I went to the dentist. My dentist got in touch with my friend Tyron that I had been knowing for many years. And then I started going to meetings, and it was my first meeting. I was amazed to see all these people, and to think that they had the same problem I had, and to see someone stand up for 30 days. I thought that was a miracle. That was a miracle to see it. Somebody could do that. Then I felt like, hey, if they could do it, I can too. And I was impressed, and I was attracted to it. I was attracted to it. And that was my bottom because I didn't want to go to jail. I didn't want to lose my son. I didn't lose my home, because I lived by myself, and it's only through God's grace because I lived alone and was doing all this stuff. I don't know how it was on through God's grace, how I was able to survive in a world of destruction, and not to be afraid. I wasn't even, I had no fear. I didn't fear nothing. Nothing whatsoever. I didn't fear walking the streets at night. I didn't fear doing anything. Period. I didn't have no fear of anything because I didn't think nothing could happen. And I didn't think nobody seen anything that I was doing. And my neighbors told the police, "Oh, she always have all kind of trafficking company." I said, "I dare her," because I didn't think nobody seen nothing I was doing. I thought this was the norm to do what you was doing, what I was doing, and be a single woman by myself, you know. But that's the way I live, alone, but that's what happened. And that was my bottom because I didn't want to go to jail, and I wanted to enjoy this recovery. And being in a methadone clinic, it took about a year for me to learn how to sleep. I was aching all over because that methadone was coming out of my body and sweating. My eyeballs felt like it was charcoal. I just had to learn. I had to learn everything all over again. I was like a newborn baby, learning this baby how to crawl. The baby was crawling. That was me. Then learning how to walk, how to pull myself up. So it took a lot. And just like Monica said, it wasn't but a few women in the fellowship. So you had nobody. We just had thrush all together. Talking about any steps. We ain't talking about no steps. We were just talking about what was going on in your daily life. And that was it, sitting at a table, because then you was able to smoke cigarettes and drink coffee, and that was it. That was my bottom. I just didn't want to go to jail because I was afraid of going to jail because thinking about, at first I was going to go into service. That's before then. And they said, if you go into service, girl, they're going to have women hitting on you. I said, oh, well, I don't want that. So it was just a fear. I had no fear. I had no fear. I didn't fear anything. I didn't fear walking the streets at night. I didn't fear, turning tricks or whatever. I had no fear, nothing, and didn't think nothing about it. That's what you're supposed to do. You know, you didn't have no man come around. He didn't have nothing. He had to have something to offer. You know. And
Mhm.
then later on, it came about to get to NA. But other than that, it wasn't.
Mhm. So do you remember the date that you officially made a NA meeting?
It was, I came in 12/12/85, so it was that week or two afterwards. So it had to be like in the 15th, I stayed 7 days in detox, and that was it. And so it had to be like the 20th, 21st, or 20 something. You know, it was in December.
Okay. Okay. So
I was,
so
go ahead.
no, go ahead. You can finish your thought.
Oh, because I was at doctor's hospital and I only did 7 days and that was it. Then I just came out, started making meetings from that time on. That was it for me.
Okay. So when you did make that first NA meeting, like what was your experience and your impressions of NA?
It was like, wow, cause I mean, it's see these people, but had an opportunity to see what Tyron told me. You get with the women's, and I didn't trust when I say get with them dames, them bras. That's what I used to call them, you know. But that was how I got introduced into a female, which was Heckma. That was the main person. Was Heckma. Was at the meeting and getting a chance to see all the people getting that time, that clean time. I thought was amazing. When I seen somebody get 30 days, that was amazing. And it was just to see all them people, you know, because I didn't know anything about NA was like FA, like Monica was saying, was FA. You knew nothing about no NA until later on. And that took a while.
Okay. So I'm gonna move on. Chauncey F.
Hi, everybody. Hi, family.
Hey,
I,
Chauncey.
Hey,
Okay, so same set of questions. Like how did you get here, Chauncey? Like what was your
how I,
bottom?
my bottom was I was on the run from the police, Detroit police. My baby's father was an arsonist, and I was a participant. I was the recruiter for the people. So anyway, um, by that time, the police were looking for both of us, and I was going back and forth to court. And on the day of sentencing, I decided that I was not going to jail because I had a real bad heroin and crack cocaine habit, and I didn't want to go to jail and be sick. And so I made my way. That was my bottom, and I made my way to Harbor Light. I didn't know nothing about a treatment center. I went there because my brother was there at that time. That was I started Harbor Light in April 7th, 1986. So and when I got there, I was just amazed because all these smiling people and they welcomed me. I hadn't been welcomed nowhere forever. That's where I met Lawrence. And I don't remember the first NA meeting that I went to, but I do recall that from the treatment center, we went to Harper Hospital. And Bomani, you might have been there at my first NA meeting because we had to walk to the meetings. There was no monitor or nothing like that back in the day. We trusted each other, and if anybody was out of order, we was gonna pull you up or drag your ass to the meeting. We wasn't buying nothing, and we still do that today. We don't co-sign nothing. You know, if you out of order, we gonna let you know.
Love that. Love it. So what was Harbor? You said Harbor Heights?
Harbor Light treatment
Harbor Lights.
center.
What was that? What was that? A treatment center or something?
It was a treatment center, and I was a real hardcore addict. I was a low bottom addict. So when I got there and got all this love, I was amazed. So I immediately fell in love with the fellowship right then. And we were able to, I stayed there for 12 months. I don't know how long nobody else stayed, but I lived in the treatment center for 12 months. And it helped me a whole lot. You know, it just taught me how to follow rules and be productive member of society.
So when you actually went to a NA meeting, what was that like for you? Like,
oh my God, I fell in love with the fellowship. You know, I fell in love. That's where I met Sandra, and I was always scared of Sandra F. So I never was one of her sponsees, but I watched her the entire time that I went to meetings. I watched what she did, what she said, all of that. And that's what helped me. And Pearline was around at that time. That's when I got attached to her. And early on, and I also had met Monica too. So, and Rosemary. These ladies, they helped me to become a lady, because all I knew how to be is a street person.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you one last question on, because Sandra F is coming up as, because I heard you say I wasn't one of her sponsees. So was this a lady, Sandra F, was she one that was sponsoring a lot of the women?
She sponsored a lot of women. She loved on them, and you know, a lot of people follow her because she was clean. And back then we clung to each other. We moved in a unit where everybody did the same thing. We all went to meetings together. We all fellowshipped at each other's houses. We visited each other. We celebrated our kids. We was like one family. You know, that's just how it was back then.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Chauncey. Monica, I'm going to come back to you. What was your bottom, Monica?
Oh, okay. Okay. My bottom, Jackie, I was like Pearline, I was afraid. I lived in the 10th precinct, and back then, that was the police officers that they were in the gangster's pockets. And I had turned a trick with a cop and stole his gun. And I was afraid. Fear brought me in because I lived in the 10th precinct at the time. And it was just a matter of time that he was going to find me. So I ran into treatment at Detroit Memorial Hospital. Yeah. I was just blessed. On the first call, I was accepted.
Okay.
And thank you for coming back to me, Jackie. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. Okay, is Rosemary here?
Yes.
All right.
How's everybody?
Everybody's doing well, I hope. Okay, so Rosemary, how did you get here? Like, what was your bottom?
My bottom was failing my classes and getting eviction notice, and I went into a 14-day detox in Westland. I didn't come to NA directly in Detroit. It's like a suburb of Detroit. And the people there, the Caucasians, and it was mainly 95% Caucasian at that time. But they would really encourage you, you know, the women and the men. And the women, when I got out and I lived in Detroit in the city, they would come to the city and get me and take me back out to Westland to meetings, because that's where they went to meetings. And I don't know if they really went to meetings in Detroit. So they would come and take me to meetings in Westland and the suburbs and all of that. And then they did take me to a couple of meetings in Detroit. Matter of fact, when one of the first meetings they took me to downtown, I met Monica and Dwight at that meeting. And then the they also, I think they the one took me to Friday Night Live. So it was only just a few meetings in Detroit, and a few of them were in hospital and institution meetings. Like I heard somebody say at Harper Hospital, it was a meeting, and at Henry Ford Hospital, it was a meeting. And so that's how I got started with NA.
Okay, so what was your first experience and impressions of NA? Did you like it, not like it, the people?
Well, I honestly, I was a little uncomfortable in meetings. I was uncomfortable in meetings initially because of my own issues of trust. Like, you know, people generally showed a lot of, you know, love and hugs and things like that. But with the issues I had prior to getting to the fellowship of betrayal and mistrust and things like that all through my life, I was a little leery, like, is this really real? You know, are these people truly concerned about me? But as I continue to be willing to come to meetings, I began to grasp that they were, first of all, seemingly sincere about recovery, and I know I needed some help, and they were willing to help me. So then I began to get more comfortable as I kept coming.
Okay, so when you hit your bottom and decided to get clean, there were established NA meetings already.
Just a couple that I know of, just a couple in the city of Detroit, put it like that. But there was quite a few in the suburbs.
Okay, so you have no experience with Fellowship Anonymous.
Yeah, I went to Fellowship Anonymous, and I also went to Alcoholic Anonymous because there were so few NA meetings.
Oh, okay. So even though NA had started to have meetings, Fellowship Anonymous was still active also.
Yes.
Wow. Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies. I asked the first question. Deb, you're on.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here and the patience that you had with us getting started. And we have somebody, Jim, who said he got clean March 18th, 1968. Jim M. Whoa, 1968. Wonderful. Marvelous. Thank you. And so, ladies, I want you all to just jump in and tell us, you know, how did you deal with sponsorship back then, and how do you deal with it now?
Well, for me, this is Monica. For me, when I came in, there weren't any women here that had as much clean time as I had. I think there was one lady, her name was Ivy, but she was mostly Alcoholics Anonymous. But the men were my sponsors. Dwight was my sponsor initially for several years. The men taught me how to be a lady. You know, they taught me how to be a mother, how to be a parent, how to be an employee. And as time went on, and like Sandra F. came in, and the other ladies, Pearline and Rosemary was there. It was difficult for me to really associate with a lot of ladies. And it was brought to my attention that I traveled alone. When Sandra F. came in later on in '84, and as time went on, the sponsorship for her, she started sponsoring women as they started coming in. As the crack epidemic hit, more and more women started coming in. But as far as me handling sponsorship, I think I had 2 sponsees for like 3 years. And then after that, I started picking up. But we sponsored each other because that's all we had was each other. Like Charcy mentioned, you know, we recovered in unison, you know, like in ways when one moved, the other moved. I recover from other people's experience, strength, and hopes, because that was all I had at the time, was that core group of people. And Dwight was among them. And Mike T. Mike T is who took me to my first meeting. But it was the men. We didn't honor that saying when women sponsor women, men sponsor men, because it wasn't feasible at the time I came in.
All right, someone else want to answer that?
Could you repeat that question?
And
How did you handle sponsorship back then, and how do you handle it now?
Okay, well, for me,
really,
oh, go ahead.
no, it was for me. I had Heckma. No, I had no other choice. I had Heckma and sponsor me.
Breaking up a little, Pearlie.
No, between Heckma and Tyrone. Okay, can you hear?
Yes.
Okay, I had Heckma. She was my sponsor, and she stuck by me through everything. And also with Tyrone and Sandra. But Sandra, when she seen me coming, she was crying. I want to know what was she crying for? You know, she was crying to see that I guess females coming in, and for her to, because I came 85, she was 84. So that's how that was. You know, I had Heckma. She was my rock. And she still is today, although she's deceased, but I still honor her and I think of her just like I talk to her children still today and grandkids. So I still have a connection. And the ladies that I sponsored back then, I think I have one now that I still sponsor and keep in touch with, two. And that's how I'm doing. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chauncey.
Oh, I apologize for jumping in out of place. Yeah, so for me, early on, you know, I was so afraid that I was gonna relapse until whatever y'all said, I did that, because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired of being a dope fiend. And at that time, I met Joyce in treatment. They call her Joyce H. She's gone now, but I clung to her, and she took me. We went all over Michigan to meetings. We went to FA meetings. We went to NA meetings. We went to AA meetings. We was going all over Michigan. Wherever there was some recovering people at, that's where we went. So she taught me how to make meetings, and we made meetings every single day. And when we didn't make meetings, we worked together. So we just kind of did everything together. You know, we recovered together, and I clung to her. And then I had another lady that was sponsoring me. That was one of Monica's sponsees. She was one of my first sponsors, Mary, as well. And she taught me a whole lot. So those ladies, they pulled me along. They pulled me in. You know, I was scared to do anything without their permission. And today, I still do the same thing. I sponsor women still today. I don't sponsor like Sandra does. She told me, girl, you got to start sponsoring people. I was like, I ain't finna sponsor all the people. I don't know how. So, you know, I didn't do it, you know, her way, because she had her own unique way of sponsoring these women. But right now, today, I still sponsor. I have 6 sponsees right now, and we do what we need to do, you know.
Okay, thank you. Rosemary, you're gonna.
Yes. Well, when I came in, again, it was around the same time, Monica, it wasn't a lot of women with any time. I did get a sponsor, but it was through the guys kind of directing me, like, why don't you go with her and you know, let her sponsor you? And I just, because of my issues, kind of looked at her, and it was Sherry E. And she kind of looked at me, and we were looking at each other like, do I want to really, because, women have a lot of issues with trust. Well, I guess we both did, but we were willing to take the suggestion. And that's how I got a sponsor. And because of my struggles in the beginning, I didn't immediately sponsor anybody, but I eventually sponsored. Matter of fact, HECMA was my first sponsee. I eventually sponsored maybe about a year later, but the sponsorship I found to be very important because that was part of your unit. That was part of your direction and protection. And a lot of it at that time came from the men who may have been a little bit more focused on recovery, and maybe because it was more of them, maybe they were a little bit more unified, but they were really into trying to direct the women that did come in. That seemed like they really cared and wanted you to recover and stay there. So connect with these women and, follow what we're doing and take the suggestions. And that's what I was able to do.
Okay, well, thank you. So what we learned is that there were not a lot of women who could sponsor women. So you did choose men. And when you came together, it was sharing recovery together and learning from each other. So
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jackie?
I want to piggyback just because sponsorship is like the heart for me, right?
Yes.
How are y'all handling sponsorship now? Because I know a lot of people that have time now struggle with finding sponsors. What's going on right here, right now with your recovery with sponsorship?
Well, I'm one of those that's looking for a sponsor, and it's hard to find somebody. Julianne became my sponsor years ago, and I got her through Dwight. Dwight guided me to her because it was time for him to let me go. But that's usually how it worked back then. Like Rosemary was saying, we were just blessed. I was just blessed to have that handful of men that guided me in my recovery. And I know there were clean time requirements for a lot of things, but nobody had the clean time. So, and like as of right now, I have 2 women that I sponsor, and I've been sponsoring them, I don't know, maybe 25 years. But everybody else has passed. And not only that, I'm older now. I have health issues, and I don't have the time to sponsor anybody. However, I do talk to people because I know the importance of that. That helped me. We didn't, have that label sponsor back then because, like I said, all we had was each other. And that's how we recovered. If Rosemary went through something, you can bet and believe the next month I would be going through the same damn thing. And I could call Rose and say, hey girl, how did you deal with this? Or how did you deal with that? And that's how it went. Or went to a man, because some of the men were married and their wives, they had issues within the marriage, and they could help me in my relationships. So, sponsorship is very, very important. Very.
So Pearline, Chauncey, and Rosemary, do you all have sponsors now? Or is it kind of like a difficult situation and y'all just rely on each other?
For me, I have a sponsor. My sponsor has a sponsor, and my sponsor has. That's how y'all taught me early on, and I have not ventured off into anything else because that's what helps me.
Okay, Rosemary.
I currently don't have a sponsor, but I do stay connected with people As I generally always kind of have, I pick up the phone, you know, and I call. And I have people that I kind of try to guide and direct, but I don't take on the title as a sponsor. It's a little bit more difficult for me as well. I've had a lot of medical challenges over the last few years, but I do stay, you know, connected and, you know, share the message when I'm able to.
Okay, Pearline, I think we missed you. You have a sponsor now, or it's kind of like, you know, just hanging on with others? Okay, Pearline. All right, she's not answering. So we're going to move on, and we're going to ask about survey. Okay, so the next question we're going to ask is, how did you and other women of your time carry the message to other women? Like, was there H&I, the hotline, public information? Was there literature review? So Monica, you want to start?
Okay, well, with me, I was hanging on to White for dear life at the time, and he was real active in H&I. So with him, like at Harper Hospital and Samaritan and a few of the other ones, Robin Wood, I got involved that way through H&I. That was my first introduction anyway to Narcotics Anonymous, was through H&I. And now the helpline, I love that. I love the idea of having a pager back then. We didn't have cell phones. and y'all gave me a pager, so I thought I was hot stuff, you know. And not only that, you all kept my phone on if I had the pager. So yeah, I carried the message that way, and I love that. I love guiding people, calling in crises, or just calling, wanting to talk. You know, sharing this fantastic way of life of Narcotics Anonymous. I love that. I really did.
Pearline? Did we lose Pearline? Okay, so we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to Chauncey.
Hey everybody. Back then, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll give it to you. No problem. How did you and the other women of your time carry the message to other women? Was it through H&I, hotline, public information, literature review? Like, did y'all have any subcommittees where y'all could carry the message to other women in recovery at that time?
Well, you know, early on, we didn't carry it. I personally didn't carry it through any committee or anything. We were still traveling as a group, so we would share the message that way. You know, any women that wanted to know about recovery, we embraced them, and we took them under our wing, whether it be at a meeting. Sometimes it would be at work, and we would be talking about recovery, and they would come over and want to know about recovery. So we carried the message just by doing what we were supposed to do, and whoever wanted some help, we was always willing, you know. And I had a connection with the church in my neighborhood, and the minister knew that I was in recovery, and they would refer people to me. And so what I would do was I would gather some more addicts, and we did 12-step work back then, you know, a lot, you know. And so we carried the message that way through personal contact in our communities. We never went by ourselves. We always went as a group. Y'all taught us that. And, you know, that's what we did, you know. And if somebody was in trouble, we would have conversations on a 3-way or 6-way or whatever way it was on the telephone, and we would decide how we was going to handle that addict. The addict was in a dope house. We would talk about that and see how to handle that. And we decided we was never going to go to a dope house, we might go outside and blow, but we wasn't going inside, you know. So we just, you know, it was a group thing.
Okay. Pearline, are you back with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. So the question we're asking is, service. How did you and the other women of your time carry the message to other women? Like, was it through subcommittees or what was your experience with that?
It was through, like you said, subcommittees, because it was me and Galinda that we would go out to answer calls and would stay with someone until they, you know, felt better. And
So you did like 12-step calls? Or was it through H&I or public information or literature review or the hotline?
Pearl, public information.
Huh?
Pearl was really active in public information. She was really, she would travel out of town a lot, her and Heckma. So they traveled several times carrying the message.
Okay.
Yeah. And also it was me and Galinda, we would go out at night, you know, because we would get a call. And she had an old station wagon and we would go out. That's what we did. And then later on, I went into public information where I went out of town to carry the message to females to just recovery. I would do that. And it's not as so prevalent as today as it was back then, because that's all we had. And working the steps, we didn't have too much about steps. We just worked the steps as it came. We had to work them. That's how we stayed, and that's how we're here today.
You're right, Pearl, because you remember back then, we weren't writing steps out and all that stuff. There was no step work guide. None of that stuff was going on. None of that.
When did y'all get introduced to the steps?
You introduced immediately. You introduced immediately. But as far as writing them out, now we did definitely practice that fourth and fifth step. We did that. But you know, we were introduced immediately. It just wasn't as intense as it is now. We didn't have all the literature that's available. I came in. Done. I came in with the second edition. I still have my third edition book, and I think the very first time it was a little white booklet. There weren't any basic texts at all. None.
And that is so amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing how the literature they have now, all the IPs. It's like, damn, where all this come from?
Wow.
And then
Even the Serenity Prayer wasn't the same. The Serenity Prayer had changed.
That's right. The Serenity, and we closed with the Lord's Prayer
now than what it was back then.
Prayer back then.
Wow.
I remember coming to a meeting and they closed with the Serenity Prayer. I said, "What's this?" You know, it was just foreign to me. It had changed so much. The fellowship started growing tremendously. It's like every 2 or 3 months, it was like a whole new page had turned on how fast this fellowship had grown.
Wow. So Rosemary, what is your experience with carrying the message to other women?
It started mainly with H&I. Dwight also was a person that assisted me with getting to meetings with transportation, and he did a lot of H&I work. So in writing with him, we would often, he would include me with going out and talking even to pastors, getting meetings started, and going to hospitals and institutions, because probably half of the meetings that existed were in hospital and institutions. So, you know, the people that were, you know, in the detox ward, the people that still had the IVs, they were still carrying the poles, they come to me, filling their gowns. You know, I was consistently in the hospital and institution meetings, carrying the word there. And, you know, wherever we could get a meeting started at, you know, it was only a few women. So we, it definitely immediately reached out to the women to try to encourage them and carry the message to them.
Okay.
And so many of us had children, Jackie, and,
Mhm.
and back then we could bring our children to meetings.
Yeah.
And my daughter, I would bring my daughter, and there was another lady, Carolyn, she would bring her children, and they would have their own little meeting at Harper Hospital. That they started is it Narratine back in 1985 or 84 down there at Harper Hospital. Dwight was on staff there
Right.
at the time, and and so that's where I had my first open talk in 1985. Celebrated my first year down at Harper Rose. But yeah,
Right.
Harper Hospital and other facilities allowed us women to bring our children, and we watched each other's children.
Yeah.
It was just different
Yeah.
then. It was different than the way it is now.
Yeah.
Completely different.
It was
Okay.
smaller.
Uh-huh.
And like Rose was saying, you know, over time, more women started coming around, and we had this trust factor, and we had gotten used to us, because I had just gotten used to Rose and Sandra, and I didn't want to meet anybody else. You know, I was done, and then you know, with crack, more and more women came in, and I just kind of stepped back. You know, I had my little core group of women that I sponsored. Mary C was one of them. But yeah, it was just, we carried the message by the way we walked. We
That's
walked,
it.
we talked then. And if we stepped out of line, you know, like we all agree, the men were there to check us.
Yes.
They were there to check us, because most of them wanted us to recover too, because I think they saw us as an extension of them.
Okay, and it sounds like Dwight was instrumental in every one of y'all's recovery. So
Well,
then,
Dwight and I came together. We held each other's hands, walking in together, and he absolutely was instrumental.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Very, very much.
He was very much so.
The
Deb,
good,
you're
the
on.
bad, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
So
Yeah.
some of you answered some of the questions, but I want to know what was the effect of AIDS and hepatitis, and how did y'all experience that? What did you do?
Oh my God.
Oh Lord.
That
I
was
think it
something
was
there.
a devastating effect. I really do.
Yes. I remember taking my first AIDS test. Dwight and I went and took it together. And back then it took 2 weeks to get the results. Man, we were on pins and needles. I said, damn, if it comes back negative, we're going to stay negative. And they came back negative. We said, phew.
I think I had planned my funeral.
Yeah, absolutely. But that was the first pandemic that we experienced.
Yeah.
Was AIDS and Hep C. Yeah.
And
I remember people sharing their Hep C experience and didn't tell anybody else, because everything was hush hush. You know, you didn't talk about it.
And for me, I was definitely afraid of it, and it was a lot of people that had came in. Some of them would share that they was HIV positive or had Hep C, and I was years into the program before I found out that I had Hep C. You know, and and that's when I started sharing about it, and I got some real good information and got cured from it. But at that time, it was really scary, because I knew that I had practiced all the behaviors for HIV, and I didn't get it. And that was such a relief. I was like, I know damn well I'm about to stay clean, because I bypassed that, and it's only through the grace of God that I did. So it was a scary time.
It was.
Yes.
And
But we did have
so many people that we loved died.
Yeah.
that they died. And a lot of it had to do with our ignorance too. We weren't very patient or loving to a lot of people that were that tested positive for HIV.
I ain't had no problem with it. I embraced them just like,
Yeah, well, I did too, but other people didn't. That we did start the common needs meeting, which helped them.
What was the common needs meeting?
You gonna go ahead, Tora?
Huh?
She said, "What is the common need meeting?"
It was primarily gay and lesbian, although it wasn't just for them, because I went to a couple of common needs meetings and I didn't feel left out or anything. But yeah, it was primarily gay and lesbian. That, well, what are all the letters now? A, B, Q, T, whatever it is. I don't know.
LMNOPFG.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. But yeah, we have several people now. We have several.
It didn't make any difference. Oh, I'm sorry. It didn't make no difference. It was a common meet. It was still a meeting, and you went. I would go because it was a meeting. I didn't care what the hell. I wanted to stay clean, no matter what. So it didn't make me no difference. I would go. And then as we talked about the HIV, it was a young lady that confided in me because she trusted. We did have some trust. Yeah. She told me about it, and I never revealed it. Never. Because I would prefer be her to reveal it. It wasn't going to be me.
Right.
So what you're saying, the common needs came out of a desire for people who had a common need to share their experiences when the AIDS and the hepatitis epidemic came. Yes. No?
Yes. No.
No. No. Bomani shaking his head.
Well, but Bomani needs to step in and explain it.
He can't. Go ahead, Bomani.
I'm muting.
Recovering addict named Bomani. The common needs meeting started out basically gay and lesbian. We had another meeting for what we call double trouble, and that was the meeting where the HIV that people came to. There were two separate occasions. Yes, there were people who had HIV that went to common needs meetings, but we had some meetings specifically designed for people who had the virus.
Right. I forgot about double trouble. You're right, Bomani.
Thank you. Thanks. So we're going to get ready to wrap up, ladies. Is there anything else you want to tell people about yourselves, about the experience in Detroit?
Well, the experience in Detroit, I feel, were so unique. They're like now, like I said, they say men sponsor men and ladies sponsor ladies. If it wasn't for the men back then, I wouldn't be here today.
Okay.
So it's altogether different. The first, I should say, anniversary or something in NA, it was 71 people. That was the whole fellowship in Detroit. 71 people. Wow. And it was at a place called the Zoo, Mount Zion. It was 71 people. The fellowship was so small back in 84 and 85. It was so loving. It was different. And the crack epidemic hit, and it just grew. Thank God. Thank God it did.
Pearline, you have something to add?
No, I lost my train of thought now.
So we're getting ready to wrap up this women's segment. Was there something that you wanted to share that we didn't ask you?
It was something, but like I said, it was like Dwight, like I said, he played a big part in all our lives, because just like starting meetings, I remember him coming to get me to start a meeting out Southwest Detroit. At Zombie Hospital was Roosevelt House. So he played a big part. And today he still play a big part because he don't have no problem telling you like it is. It take a while for you to kind of chew it up and spit it out. But he'll tell you the truth about it. And you still have to love him for who he is, because he's not going to sugarcoat it. He's going to come straight to you with no problem. And the same thing with Tyrone. He still tell me, now you need to stop acting like that. Stop it. You know, so these kind of people, they really help me, even like today. And like we said, we went to jails, institution. I remember we went to the jails. I remember we went to Maryland, Michigan to the prison.
Right.
Yeah.
Charles
And
C.
when that thing, when them jail doors made that noise, oh, I was a wreck. I got nervous. You know.
Darcy?
I just I love y'all so much. Each and every one of y'all. I just want to say that, yeah, the meetings themselves have morphed over the years. And right now, today, it seems like some don't want to hear whatever it is that we old timers have to say. But
That's right.
I still find in my heart to try to pull them up some kind of way, because I don't want to die. If anybody, it could be a newcomer, old comer, whatever comer, I want you to come to me and let me know whatever it is that I need to do, because, you know, I don't want to die out here. And y'all ingrained in me the honesty, the open-mindedness, and the willingness. And it seems like people want to shape recovery today. It ain't like that. You got to shape your life into the recovery aspect of it. You know, that's just how it works.
Mm-hmm. No matter what. I remember going to meetings. I remember going to meetings in a stolen car. Dwight and I, we were going to meetings in stolen cars. And I remember Dwight's stolen car got stolen. He had all his literature stuff in there. But yeah, no matter what, we made it to meetings and we recovered, holding on to each other.
And I want to thank you women. First of all, it's been such a pleasure and honor to get to know you and to spend time with you. And I hope I can keep doing that with you all. And thank you so much for coming and sharing your history with everyone.